move on and talk about Nottingham Forest, because the club have been warned actually about their commercial sponsorship with Cayenne Sports. What do you make of that news?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, I looked into it in quite a lot of detail about this, and the basic theory here is that Cayenne Sports is not approved by the Gambling Commission, so therefore you shouldn't be actually using that logo on the shirts to try and entice UK bettors. The argument against that is that they're saying, well, we're not actually active in the UK market. We're using this as advertising for the Asian markets. And it made me think, when I was at Everton, if you remember, we had a sponsor on the shirt called Chang beer from Thailand. And at that time, when they first started, they had no beer sales in the UK at all. And that was purely, it was just for the Asian market. It was cheaper for them to buy a shirt on a Premiership club and have advertising in Thailand and in their Asian markets than it was for them to buy advertising on TV in Thailand and the Asian market. So it made all the commercial sense for them. But they weren't actually aiming at the UK market. So the same thing is being put forward here. Forest have already spoken apparently to the Gambling Commission. They've clarified that they're in full compliance with the situation. There's a lot of noise, as we know, around gambling companies on shirts, and certainly 26, 27, they'll be gone. So I think this is going to be okay, I think, until the ban comes into effect. And I don't see a real issue around it, to be honest. It's been a murky world for a long time around where those gambling companies are domiciled. And there's a number of them. I mean, in the Premier League right now, I mean, Stake for Everton is an example. I think Wolves have got one. There's a few. They're under the same umbrella as the Cayenne group. But I think it'll all be okay, and I think people are going to keep them going until 26, 27, when that whole sector of the market disappears, and I bet it will.
And when it does then, I didn't get that until then, when it does disappear, Keith, what do you think in terms of the replacement? I know you've spoken quite a lot about crypto. Do you think that's potentially where that void could be filled?
Yeah, I think crypto. I think the other big market is going to be cybersecurity. I think those are going to be areas that are going to develop very quickly. And of course, AI and commercial uses of AI will be another area that will come in. There will always be a market for those sort of numbers and eyeballs that the Premier League is reaching. It's always going to be effective. And the clubs that can not just have a shirt sponsor, but also then have an activation strategy behind it to reach the fans and to generally turn them into sales in many cases, that will be key. But the Premier League is still the big elephant. It's still there. It's way ahead of the La Liga. And it is still the biggest game in town in terms of this sort of area. So I don't see a problem replacing the gambling ones. I don't think they should have been banned, but that's my own opinion. Politicians, virtue signaling again rather than just getting on with letting the business, develop itself. But I think there are enough other new developing areas that will come in to replace it.
In terms of looking ahead then, because obviously it's banned for the 26-27 season, would there be some expectation, Keith, that going into 25-26, so for the for the season previously, the one after this one, could there be a chance that some of those start to emerge, the like of a cybersecurity? Could they slowly get introduced before gambling is then banned?
Oh, no doubt. I think every club right now is looking for a non-gambling sponsor if they can find one. But I don't think that those areas are in such maturity just yet to be able to compete with the prices that the gambling companies are prepared to pay. But there's no doubt everybody would prefer not to have a sponsor that is going to be disappearing and try and build a longer-term relationship if they can do. So it may well be for the foresighted clubs is they grab somebody in one of those new sectors and they give them a lower entry fee with an escalator clause that goes up every year as they go forward, and they get bigger as well. So you may find that sort of structure being put in place to attract these new areas, like, say, cybersecurity, AI, etc., and the crypto side as well. So there may well be those deals done because there will be an imperative knowing that the gambling situation will disappear.
And in terms of some transfer news for them, we know that Aaron Ramsdale has been linked with the club. What are your thoughts on a potential move for him, and what's his valuation in today's market?
Well, I think it could well be a loan. So I don't know if there's going to be any fees from what I'm seeing about Ramsdale. I think he's a great keeper. I think he's been very badly treated at Arsenal. I really do. I'm surprised the way that the whole thing unfolded. But I think he's a very good keeper. I remember when he first arrived at Arsenal, everybody was saying what a fantastic keeper he was. He had a superb spell, and then pretty much out of the blue, the second keeper came in. So I think they've got to, if they can get him first team football again at Forest, I think he'll be one of the best keepers of the season. I think he's perfect for what Forest need.
In terms of then looking ahead, I mean, kind of the question then would be, Keith, would he go back to Arsenal and push for that number one spot? Would he sign for Forest? Would he move on? What would his career projection be if he does go to Forest on loan for the season?
Yeah, I think he'd like to try and compete for Arsenal again. I think he'd like to show just what he's worth. And I think if the papers start talking about him as England's potential, next, the number two after Pickford, which could well happen because he's that talented. I think there could be pressure on Arteta to take him back. I think Arsenal want to hang on to some depth if they can do, but I think he is going to put pressure on them. I'd back him to do that, and I think he'd like to end up showing people that he was exactly as good as they thought he was at the start.
In terms of their season projection, I know we discussed sort of Nuno's aims for the year, pushing for sort of avoiding that relegation fight going into the season. Is this a sort of statement signing, you think, that would immediately rule them out of that potential fight going into the end of the season?
I think it is. I think that a keeper in that sort of end of the table is so crucial. I mean, Pickford, I think, almost single-handedly, although with Tarkowski and Branthwaite in front of him, but still Pickford, I think in the last 3 seasons has been a huge factor in Everton staying up. And I think that's going to be the same with Forest. I think that Ramsdale could almost assure them that there won't be a relegation fight. I think he's that important. I think he's a great keeper in terms of communication with his defence. So overall, I think he's the crucial factor for them, I think, and that could well give Marinakis the season he's hoping for of at least mid-table security. So yeah, I think it's a big one for them. If they can pull it off, I think it could be good for all parties.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.